For those of you in the field, you know they love acronyms, so that's also known as OACB. She joined OACB as Executive Director in July of 2013. Before coming to the association, Bridget was the Vice President of Government Affairs for the Ohio Hospital Association, where she was responsible for all state level advocacy and represented hospitals before the legislative and executive branches of government. She joined the OAH team in 1992 after working for a long time as the Ohio House Speaker Vern Reif and Prentice Hall. At OACB, Bridget serves as the organization's chief executive and is responsible for all management functions, member relation duties, and program oversight. Please join me in welcoming Bridget Gargan.
Thank you, and thank you for having me here tonight. And so welcome to all of you and to Director Jeff Davis, who you're going to hear from in a little bit. So thank you for the kind introduction, but I want to tell you why I'm in this position and why I'm very passionate about it. I was a parent for a very short while, and it left me wanting to know, letting to know the world that my child mattered. And I feel like I've met a lot of parents of kids with developmental disabilities who want the world to know that their kids matter, and I've met a lot of people with developmental disabilities who want the world to know they matter, and that's why I'm here. So I was asked to cover a very wide range of subjects, including providing you all with a little bit of background about OACB. I see a few familiar faces in the audience. So a little bit about OACB, what we do, the state budget, and a number of the issues that we are working on. This is Spinal Tap. Yeah, you know, this is really boring, right? Yeah. Okay, so we're going to kind of improvise here, but without a clicker. I'm going to try to avoid the limelight of the projector. And so OACB is a statewide trade association. We represent the county boards. I try to be very careful when I speak that I don't say we, because OACB exists to support all of you. We are not the people that have direct contact with families and have to have a lot of those very hard and challenging conversations. We exist to support the county boards. And we went through, much like many of you, a strategic planning exercise, and in terms of why the association exists and what we want to be. And is there anything that strikes you about this vision statement about a county board association who works with county boards of developmental disabilities? The words developmental disabilities do not appear, and it's about people. And that's where the direction that we would like to go, and as we talk about things. So in terms of everything that we do, so I know these by heart. So, in terms of how we focus our efforts on your behalf, we are a policy and advocacy organization. We have a presence at the State House. We are building a presence slowly but surely at the federal level, and we advocate on your behalf, including sometimes we have staff that will go with superintendents and business managers to meet with local elected officials as well. In terms of so you may see some of our materials in terms of policy and advocacy. We follow a lot of bills on your behalf. Right now, the state budget is pending, and that's what we're going to spend the majority of this evening talking about. We're going to go through a lot of information, so please, let's keep this conversational. I'm not going to read the slides to you and will not cover every slide, but please feel free to ask questions as we go. So we advocate on your behalf, we communicate on your behalf. There is a lot of information, and especially over the last 5 years, there's been a lot happening in the DD universe. And so our communications team does the best they can to make information concise and so that you can point and click without having to look for information. And so we've really made an effort over the last 5 years or so to have our communications and our social media keep up with current times and be as timely and as informative as possible. Professional development, some of you have seen some familiar faces with staff and trustees and superintendents. We do a spring conference, which is coming up at the end of May, and our annual conference, November, December, as always, the Wednesday after Thanksgiving. My family keeps insisting that OECD needs to move the time of that conference, so I will be a nicer, sweeter person at Thanksgiving. But we're locked in the contract, so the family's out of luck. But we also do things like the SSA Forum. We had nearly 500 SSAs in Columbus last week. Again, just to distill information, share best practices, network. There's a lot that's happening. And then also in terms of professional development, in terms of, we do a lot with new board member trainings or evenings such as this. And then also, we also do training in technical assistance. And that is where our finance person, Rick Black, will go out, and he's been to many counties. He's been to some of your counties, and he'll work on cash forecasts with counties, take a look at the numbers, and to ensure that the counties are sustainable and financially healthy. So policy and advocacy, communications, professional development, and technical assistance. Those are the pillars of what we do on your behalf. So in terms of the goals and kind of our North Star or guidepost compass for what we do and how we evaluate issues are all on these things. In terms of simplification, an example of something we did recently for simplification is the wait list, fix the list. How's that going for everybody? Any SSAs in the audience? Doing okay? Okay. The waiting list was very cumbersome, and it was very hard to explain to people, and so this is an effort to streamline the wait list. And that's an example of something that we took on with a bunch of other stakeholders in regards to simplification. In regards to collaboration, a couple of things. In terms of the, next one. Collaboration with providers. We've been part of an effort with providers and some parents to do a Provider Guide Plus. Do you remember Angie's List when it first came out? It's changed somewhat now with the internet. This was an effort to give families a free resource like Angie's List so that there was information on providers. Because what SSAs and superintendents kept hearing from providers is, please don't hand me a long list of providers. I need information. Who would you send, where would your child go? And with pre-choice of provider, you really can't answer those questions. So Provider Guide Plus was a couple-year effort to provide this. Well, guess what? Families are not using it. No. And the reason is they are afraid of retaliation by the providers. And we just did not anticipate that. And so we're kind of taking a step back. Again, this has been over 2 years in the making, and really feel there is some merit and value in it. So we're taking a step back with the other stakeholders and kind of retooling and looking if there's a better way to market that and take that fear factor away from families. So those are just some of the examples of some of the things that we do. So let's talk about the state budget. It's the State House version of March Madness. There aren't any brackets though. And I'm sure Jeff is going to hit on some of those things. And so if you are a logical, linear thinker, the State House is not for you. Just so you know, yes. Logic does not apply to anything that happens there. And so that's actually a pretty good graphic of the budget process at the State House right now. So one thing about budget time is you can't even fathom, or maybe you can, the lines at the State House for people with an interest in the state budget. And oftentimes people are surprised, and if you can read some of these, you know, the lawyers, you know, travel, hotels, motels, lodging, trucking association, the municipal league, craft beer, I mean, healthcare, hospitals, nursing homes, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, oil people, rock people, cement people, you know, there's all kinds of things going on. So that's, the competition is really fierce for dollars at state budget time. And so we started working on the state budget last spring and really kind of picked up in the summer, talking with county boards, families, providers, the former director of BD, John Martin, and his team about some of the things that were really important. Now, Jeff is handpicked by Governor Mike DeWine to lead the Department of Developmental Disabilities. And so he'll be talking more about this, but when there's a new governor, they have until the middle of March to unveil a budget. When the governor, every other year it has to be introduced by the first week of February, but when there's a brand new governor starting a brand new term, they give them until March. So it's a very condensed time frame because the budget is a constitutional mandate that it must be adopted by June 30th. And so they have to have a budget in place. In the last 30 years, I think maybe there have only been like a couple of times where they've had to do an interim budget. So the State House is not like the federal government in Washington where they just keep passing interim budget after interim budget and interim budget and kicking the can down the road. The state reps and state senators do not have that option. And the other option they don't have is they cannot overspend. There's no deficit spending with the state budget. So unlike Congress in the federal debt that is mushrooming and growing by the day, the state cannot do that. So in terms of our priorities, what do you hear in your communities about people complaining about, or what's the biggest need?
Direct support.
Direct support. And before Jeff joined the Department of DD, he was with the Ohio Provider Resource Associations, and we've been in hundreds of hours of meetings. A lot of your superintendents, SSAs, community engagement people have been spending a lot of time on this for the DSPs. And so Jeff, you're probably going to talk about that a little bit, so I'll kind of breeze through some of this. But what happened right after the new governor came in is the department did find a pretty innovative way to collaborate with county boards to help direct support professionals. We're optimistic that we can get to about around $12.38 an hour. Right now the average is about 11, and so we're really looking forward to that. As I talked with people with developmental disabilities who want all the same things we all want, they want to be loved and included and to go places, whether it's for recreation or work. And guess what? If you don't have a mom and dad or nuclear family who can help transport you, there are a lot of people that are just out of luck. And so there's been a pretty major effort to look at non-medical transportation. We're hoping there's a $5 million commitment from the state in the budget that was introduced. It's really a phenomenal budget for developmental disabilities, and hope to have that up and running sometime in October. And then the county board 5-year forecast. County board finances are really complicated. DD funding in Ohio is really complicated. Former Director Martin He was there for 12 years, and one of those years he brought in a couple of nationally known experts on state DD funding and had them do a review of the system in Ohio. And in the exit interview, these guys had traveled everywhere, they said, "This is the most complicated state we have ever seen." So the reason that's important is, the county boards aren't like the area agencies on aging, where they may work with somebody who's on a passport waiver for a limited amount of time. These are lifelong commitments. And so we brought Rick Black on, who's a retired business manager from Butler County, to work with counties on doing forecasts to ensure that they have the money they need to meet their commitments to people. So there's language in the budget requesting that. We may have some things to talk about. It says you can do whatever you want once you get the information, so we may have to talk about that. There's guardrails on there. So also in terms of for the budget, in terms of the OECD's list, everything our high priority items are all included in the budget. What we're hearing from the boards is that the face of the people they are seeing is changing. And it's not just Down syndrome, but kids with really complex needs. Certainly the opioid epidemic has been fueling a lot of that. In terms of just hearing from counties who are struggling to find therapeutic residential placements for 12-year-old females who are acting in very violent nature. And it's sad and it's scary, and there just aren't a lot of resources for parents. And so Governor DeWine has really kind of planted a flag in the ground to support children's service agencies. And a lot of times around the Family and Children First table, the county boards are the ones that are looked at as having the deep pockets. And so we are fully supporting this money for children's services and multi-system youth. There's some money for DD, but we're still working through how all that is actually going to work. And then the last bullet, summary suspension process for providers. A lot of the county privatized their workshops over the last 4 years. The CMS rule just turned 4 on March 17th, ingrained in the brain. And so a lot of counties were saying, well, what's our role now? Now that we're not doing waiver services and we're paying all this money for providers, what do we do when something goes wrong and the state's not responding fast enough? So that was the premise of a conversation that started in the last budget. A group of superintendents and providers got together and agreed, and even the Department of ED acknowledged that there have been times when they have not been responsive enough in certain situations when bad things were happening in residential places. And so there is language included in the state budget for county boards, so there will be a summary suspension process for when things go terribly awry, unfortunately in an abuse type or injury type situation. And so there's no opposition that we know of, so we're pretty confident that will stay in the budget. None of this is guaranteed. This was all included in the governor's as introduced budget, and we were so excited. We were really thrilled to see so many. With the budget, you want to play offense or defense rather than offense, trying to get things in the bill once it's introduced. But the big problem is the governor has a budget arm, and the legislature has a budget arm, and they're about $700 million apart in their projections for a balanced state budget. And again, their budget has to be balanced, so there's going to be a lot of, kind of lobbying going on at the State House. Schools are looking at a new funding formula, and nursing homes got cut $75 million, so the fund and frivolity is in full swing. So we can skip that one, just going to talk about that. The cash forecast we talked about. Keep going. I am going to, this slide's fine, but just a note about the cash forecast. And again, the transition between John Martin and Jeff is still relatively new, just a couple months old. But we really kind of picked up on that cash forecast because here's the deal. If a county is really financially hurting, it ultimately impacts all counties. And so we did a lot of work with the previous administration on really trying to shore up finances. There were a number of counties going to the state for fiscal hardship waivers, and pick your cliche, but we really are, the boards are as strong as their weakest link. So we've been doing a lot with that. A lot of you have had amazing levy support. We do have a county, Marion County, your neighbor down 23. They're on, I think, going through their 12th attempt on a levy. And so I think be grateful that your levies are passing. I personally have a fear and a concern about the public's appetite to keep passing levies. We're seeing things at the State House now where townships are having legislation introduced to do levies for streetlights. And the public can only pass so many levies. So then we talked about the non-medical transportation, and the whole idea with transportation was to be able to align the community incentives and get rid of the old big inefficient buses and have a transportation system that is a lot more embracing of community integration. So we talked about that. The federal level. I'm not going to even step into any commentary on the national level and the amount of dysfunction there. But they did unveil a budget, and the president did unveil a budget. Something that is an ongoing concern is this notion of block grants or per capita costs. They've been talked about a lot. They tend to be more of a darling with more conservative legislators, but the whole notion is that the federal government sends the state a block of Medicaid money and said, you all figure it out. So there's fewer rules, fewer regulations, but it is a state scamper then to try to get a piece of the Medicaid pie. And once they determine a number, that number is not going to get any bigger. So we don't really think that will happen this year with the House being controlled by Democrats, but that is an ongoing threat. And then also in terms of the federal budget, things that were not funded, these things were cut. The State Needy Council's independent living programs, there's a very big one in Lucas County. And then not funded, of all things to pick on, the Special Olympics, which they've already backpedaled on. It may have been a shot across the bow, the shot Kennedy driver family, I don't know who started the Special Olympics. But if we saw anything, we saw how near and dear many people hold Special Olympics, that they are somewhat sacred. They've already stepped back from that. There's some different opinions in the DE community about Special Olympics, but for tonight, and purposes of tonight, we do know that they are going to have their funding restored. So that's on the advocacy side. So we are involved in a lot of other issues, and I'm not going to give a 5-minute dissertation on each bullet point, so we're kind of going to breeze through these, but just want to have a flavor of everything that's happening that impacts developmental disabilities and even perhaps your child or your loved one. And so the DRO, Disability Rights Ohio, a few years back, they filed a lawsuit basically stating that the state was not doing enough to have a comprehensive system of DD services throughout the state. And we really, when we heard about the lawsuit, had to think about which side of the lawsuit to be on. Because if there's any educators in the audience, you may have heard of the DeRolf decision, which was nearly 25 years ago, in terms of the inequity of what's available to students across the state of Ohio. That depending on where you live is what kind of education you receive. And essentially, Disability Rights Ohio was using the same premise about ED services. And yes, they do have a point. But ultimately, what they really wanted to do was do away with county boards and have the state fund the entire system. So where is that now? And has any good come of that? Because of the lawsuit is why there were new waivers 2 budgets ago, this last budget, and we anticipate this lawsuit is in settlement conversations right now. We will anticipate that it will result in even more waivers, exit waivers, diversion waivers, other state-funded waivers. I'm a little frustrated, but I'm not a lawyer because I started thinking, why can't that money be for DSPs instead of creating new waivers? And we have waivers that are going unfilled because there aren't people to work with people. So you'll be hearing more about that. So one day last year, I was sitting in my office, I'm like, I looked at somebody and said, kind of like I had a yellow lab, and like one day I looked at my boyfriend and I said, I think we finally turned the corner on those lab ear infections. 3 days later, bed. So I was sitting in my office one day last year thinking, man, I think they're finally starting to kind of even out the CMS stuff. The majority of counties are privatized or in process. Things are good. So we got a minute? And what we found out was vocational habilitation services in Ohio have been out of compliance with the federal government's how they want them to be run, primarily because people are staying too long. It is supposed to be more of a job type training. And so that is in a work group right now being revised. We're also involved on a lot of different things with levies. We've been very active in getting legislation passed at the State House to help modernize some of the levy laws to keep up with some of the changes that have taken place over the last 4 or 5 years. We work with a lawyer who does nothing but levies. She loves talking about levies. So wait till next year. But then also right now in the State House, there are 3 or 4 bills that will make it harder to pass levies. Our lobbyist Eric Bittner testified on one of those today. You know how in the newspaper, or what you can share with your voters, this will cost $12.50 for a $100,000 valuation of a house. Well, there's a legislator that thinks that's very misleading, and I'm like, it works for me. I can calculate. But so there's kind of an assault on levies right now in the State House, but we're part of a coalition with the School Board Association, libraries, and others on those. There's been some really good stuff out of this corner of the state on supported decision making, and that maybe not everybody with a developmental disability needs a guardian. And so that really kind of, Williams and Paulding have been really involved with that, and some other counties. And based on their initiative, OACB is getting more engaged and really wants to promote that, and look forward to getting more engaged on that level. Also, with this new, with the counties not providing waiver services, there was a need to really collaborate with providers. I've heard many stories. I've been at OACB nearly 6 years. I've heard tons of stories about how these the providers and the county boards, they just don't get along. Well, we need one another now. And more importantly, people with developmental disabilities need providers and county boards and SSAs and everybody to be cooperating. And so the Department of DD came through with some grant money, contracted with Nancy Neely, a retired superintendent from Licking County, to do things like provider partnership projects, like how can we work better with providers. In one county, they are doing a lot of the backroom operations for providers. They're doing background checks, going through the applications. They're not making any hiring decisions, but they're trying to support providers and alleviate some of the financial strain by doing some of those things. In one of the counties, the county staff were talking about DSPs and the stresses of a low-wage job, and they're talking about the fact that they have access to an employee assistance program. Well, for a fairly reasonable rate, the county was willing to extend that EAP program to direct support professionals. So we're trying to build around innovation and look for different ways to collaborate. Housing, if people want to leave an intermediate care facility or move from their parents' home or their siblings' home, they need somewhere to go. And so we're on a call with DODD today, a lot of people that Brent knows, talking about some of the housing options and how we can get more information out to the counties. And then there's the County Board of the Future. You know, I grew up in Portage County. My mom was a teacher's aide at Happy Day School, the DD school. Everybody knew Happy Day School, DD, and it was a very strong community identification. And certainly there's a lot of that. Lucas County people know LAD, and you know, they knew LAD Industries. And we don't have those ties that bind anymore as much. Happy County still operates schools, but the majority of the workshops have been privatized or in process of being privatized. And you know, how do we explain to the voters what it is that you do now? 2 years ago, we had the Always There campaign, the 50th anniversary of County Board, which was a great platform to start talking about that story. But I talked with elected among the superintendents, they elect 4 officers. And we've had some conversations about a lot of what we're doing is nibbling around the edges, and we really need to start having some very hard conversations about what is the county board of the future. Who is the person the board is serving? And how do we keep county boards viable moving forward? There are threats of Medicaid managed care. There are artificial intelligence and software programs they're using in Europe for human services that, you know, they're very careful how they market those. We're not replacing people, we're complementing what you do. So there's a number of issues like that. We're taking on too many times. There are too many county board staff that all they want to do when they get to work in the morning is log on to their computer and do their jobs. Well, it doesn't always work that well. The Department of DD has had a very ambitious in-house team of IT people. I do not criticize because I do not know how to do what they do, and if you locked me in a room with $1 million, I wouldn't know. But what we do know is that people haven't been treated very well, and the new director has kind of really embraced customer service. So we're really excited to get working on some of these projects in terms of having more interoperability with county board systems and the department. So there is a lot that is happening right now, and you know, one decision begats another decision, and there really kind of is a ripple effect, especially in human services, especially in, right now, local government. The last 8 years have been fairly brutal on local government. That in turn has put some pressure on county boards with commissioners, auditors, budget commissions looking at county boards as, you know, living high on the fog, and that's simply just not the case. And so we're really doing a lot of work with counties around that. And there's also the fact of the matter that some of our problems will never go away. I was reading something not too long ago, and they were talking, and they were sharing quotes and talking about how it was really hard to find workers, especially in institutional settings, because the pay was so low. There was talk of this new novel concept that really wasn't embraced about including people with disabilities in public school, and the quotes were from 1916. And there was a whole list of them. in terms of the multi-system youth, is that the face of the child that you are going to see more now? And what does that mean for services? With kids on the spectrum, it seems like the expectations of parents are changing in terms of boards making. We saw somebody increase the boards making somebody in preschool, and then after high school. And there seems, to be with kids with the spectrum, a lot more expectations. And so, there's a lot facing the boards. But they're local, and all of you that are board members and spend your evenings when you can be at home going through financial statements or approving contracts, thank you for that. Because it's what sets the Ohio DD program apart from every other state in the nation. There's a lot of great people at the state office tower, but in a lot of states, it is a very state centralized system. And so we're committed to keeping this a local system, and thank you for all that you do, and I'm happy to answer any questions before I hand it back over to Director Davis. Questions? Director?
Thank you, Bridget. We appreciate it. Appreciate everything you and your team does at OACB. If you guys want to take a short break real quick before we get Director Davis up here to speak, we need to get him set up. So bathrooms are down the hallway.